And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hi, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska aviation weather outlook that'll take us through Friday into Saturday. Today is Thursday, October 5th. On this Thursday, we've had some rather unsettled conditions here along the west coast with brisk northeasterly winds and then a strong frontal system pushing up along the Gulf Coast with locally heavy precipitation in the northeast. By Friday morning, we'll still see widespread IFR conditions along areas of the Gulf Coast, Wrangell, St. Elias Mountains, back through much of the Panhandle. Also IFR conditions along that moisture that's pushed farther north in the form of lower ceilings and areas of mainly light snow that include the central interior as well as along the Alaska Range. We have IFR conditions up along areas of the North Slope early Friday and back out here in the southeast Bering and parts of the southwest. Friday afternoon, IFR conditions will continue along the northern and northeastern Gulf Coast from the east side of Prince William Sound from around Valdez, Cordova, eastward through Yakutat, and then down across all of the Panhandle. Still pockets of IFR conditions possible in the east central areas toward the Alcan border and along the central spine of the Brooks Range and North Slope. For Saturday morning, IFR conditions will be widespread across the Gulf, still much of the Panhandle, up through Prince William Sound and Copper River Basin back up into the Alaska Range with areas 40-mile Gold Country back down through the southwest coast, including portions of Bristol Bay and Kuskokwim Bay, and then rather widespread IFR conditions there along the North Slope. And again, that's just persistent. But some improvement is anticipated Saturday. We're going to have another low lift out of the North Pacific into the Gulf this weekend, so that's going to bring a renewed round of precipitation. The air is milder, so mainly rain, but lower ceilings and areas of moderate rain likely. Some of that moisture will pinwheel back into the colder air out of the Yukon and could bring some additional snowfall to areas of the eastern Alaska Range, and especially there northway and up toward Eagle. As we look further north, MVFR conditions, Arctic Coast, North Slope, widespread MVFR conditions, central western Alaska Range across the southwest interior and coastline, and then down along the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. One thing though, over the weekend, a drier northeasterly flow will exist. Northeasterly flow will exist along the west side of the state, so I'd anticipate some VFR, MVFR conditions where IFR conditions will be more widespread over the Panhandle and southeast as a result of another low and push of moisture coming up out of the North Pacific. So past conditions on Friday, generally IFR conditions at Atuvik Pass, especially from there northward across the North Slope. Same thing at Adigan Pass. IFR conditions, especially north side and as you fly north into the North Slope. Further southwest, Lake Clark, Merrill, west arm of the Alaska Range, IFR to start, giving way to MVFR conditions. That'll be the case at Rainy, as well as Windy Passes, IFR conditions early, giving way to MVFR. Further east, Isabel, also IFR conditions giving way to MVFR conditions during the day on Friday. Mentasta should generally be able just kind of around MVFR conditions. Further southwestward, Copper River Basin, Tanita Pass, IFR conditions giving way to MVFR, and Portage Pass will also see generally IFR conditions there in the morning, extending out over Prince William Sound, lifting, giving way to MVFR conditions. And then finally, in the far north end of the Panhandle, we're looking at Chilkoot and White to remain IFR throughout the day, Friday. And looking at the freezing levels at the surface, freezing level line runs down into the southwest interior, along through the mountains of south central. There is warmer air. We've had low pressure lift up out of the North Pacific, and as of this Thursday, residing over the lower portion of the Alaska Peninsula. That low will continue to circulate and weaken over the southeast Bering Sea early Friday. The front's already pushed further by this time Friday. Have pushed further inland, and then as a result, warmer air pulling back toward the west-northwest. We see freezing levels aloft over the Gulf, 8,000 feet, and upwards of 12,000 feet once you get near Haida Gwaii back toward Vancouver Island. Greatest threat for icing on Friday. Some of that Gulf moisture has been pulled all the way up into the interior, so we do have some areas of lower ceilings and snow around the Alaska Range up into the central interior. Generally icing a problem above 4,000 feet, out along the Gulf above 8,000, and once you get down there just south of the Panhandle through Haida Gwaii above 12,000 feet, because the air down this way is warmer aloft. And looking at the jet stream level winds, we have jet core southwesterly winds 100 to 115 knots coming up into the northeastern Gulf. Northern Panhandle at 30,000 feet. Otherwise, relatively light winds here over the central interior and around the Alaska Range as we bring it down to 9,000 feet or 700 millibars. You can see generally a moist flow at the mid-levels coming in from the south, southwest, anywhere from 35 to as high as 50 knots. Broad belt of 40 to locally 50, 60 knot winds across northwest Canada. East, northeast flow out of Norton Sound across St. Lawrence back towards St. Matthew and getting it down to 3,000 feet. The most significant belt of winds will be out of the east-northeast, south of the Bering Strait across St. Lawrence out of Norton Sound, off the and along the Yukon Delta at 35 to 40 knots. And this is the area where we'd expect the greatest threat for some moderate turbulence on Friday. Areas of the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound, southwest slopes there of the Brooks Range down through areas surrounding Norton Sound, up through the lower Yukon Basin, St. Lawrence, St. Matthew Islands. And then also we have potential for some moderate turbulence along the Alaska Peninsula, southern Kodiak Island and just offshore there. And still some remnant turbulence, perhaps some moderate turbulence along areas mainly of the outer central and southwest portion of the Panhandle from surface to 6,000 feet.